just to start us off, I am so glad there are so many of us that are interested in this very niche topic. I thought it might be me and 5 people, so total, not including these fabulous people. But yeah, so I'm very excited that there's this many of us that have weird feelings about robots. That's awesome. So I might just start off with getting my panelists to introduce themselves. We have one mic with us, so we'll just see how we go, but I will ask my panelists to project their voices. And again, wave wildly if you can't hear us. So starting from the end, we have a wonderful Tina. You can just, yeah, do it.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Yeah. My name is Tina Richards, but I also go by my gamer tag of MoltenCherry. I have Cotton Candy Cyanide, which is a game development company on the Gold Coast, and we're currently working on our first visual novel titled Quantum Suicide. And we have a portable option in the game that is an AI system.
You know they're in trouble because I did not have a microphone for my last panel. I'm going to get twice as talkative now. My name is McNally, and I am a big deal. Alright, now I got that bit out of the way. I'm an independent writer and freelance writer, and I love me some androids. So
good. Hi, I'm Seth. I'm a writer, narrative designer, and podcaster. I write a lot about queer robots and artificial intelligences, and most of the things I do, it just becomes a thing because I really love robots and AIs, and yeah, that's just me.
So can my panelists talk about, synthetic, android, AI, robot? There's so many words that we can use for this, and we are kind of grouping them when we're talking about them. If the panelists are talking about a specific thing between androids versus AI versus robots, we'll let you know, but otherwise it's kind of like a plurality of terms. But if my panelists could just hop in with some particular robot or android characters that meant a lot to them or made a really big impact, that'd be great.
Let's go. The big one I can think of straight off the bat is Cortana from Halo, because I love Halo and I love Cortana a lot. Also, all of the other AIs in Halo mean a lot to me, because there's a lot within the books and everything, and I just love them all. I know there's like a particular one that I always forget and I can't think of it now, but just basically anything I read always somehow ends up having an AI. Another one I really love, I've been listening to the audio drama Wolf 359, and there's the AI called Hera in that, and she's a really cool character arc within that audio drama that I really like, because it dealt with like anxiety and that kind of stuff, which is a very human feeling, but they dealt with it in a robotic way, which is cool.
I always forget what I'm going to say when I get up here, but the first robot that is coming to mind for me right now is not actually a game reference, but I fell very, very in love with Ruby for 3 seasons, and...
That's like RWBY.
It is,
yep.
Yeah. And Penny was very, very sweet and deserved a better fate. But on a more gaming-related note, I do want to say Mass Effect Andromeda, I've been really, really jiving on having a weird symbiotic AI relationship. It's like 100% my jam. So that's been pretty rad. Yeah.
I really quite enjoy the old manga and anime, like comics. So I can definitely understand shutting away from the world and just going home to that every day would be nice. But also I really enjoy a lot of Japanese dating simulators, like Tokimeki Memorial and Love Plus and things like that. So I can see how they can replace real people. I have a very long list of wives and husbands.
So a lot of people have tied sort of queer theory and LGBTQIA communities and how we have embraced and have a real love for like android, robot storylines and characters as being a sign of post-humanism. So this theory of post-humanism being, let's broaden moral questions and moral consciousness beyond human experiences and even human people. and things like that. And so it's something that scares society a lot, to be like, what do we do when sex bots become really awesome? Oh no. And the concerns with that. So when it comes to sort of queer communities and queer narrative and the adoption and the embracing of sort of android or synthetic characters, why do we feel as sort of diverse creators that this might be so? You go first, I'm still thinking.
All right, Lauren, I got a bit of a truth bomb to drop on you right now. If anyone in the audience doesn't know me, I am very openly trans, and that has defined a lot of my experiences. So I'm gonna try and make this as concise as possible, so I don't just hog the spotlight. But I have a lifetime experience of despising the fleshy sack that I have been trapped in. And so stories about androids and AI that talk about the ideas of both self-actualization and coming to terms with identity beyond just a sort of factory-printed body, and also just taking ownership of your body in a way that is not necessarily reflected in most organic stories, is super, super meaningful to me. Also, the idea that one could theoretically change and upgrade parts of their body more or less at will is something that speaks to me on a deep, deep personal level, and that, like, more than anything else, is that is the selling point to me for stories about artificial intelligence and synthetic life. A struggle for identity and a struggle to be sort of accepted and treated as something that is real and have a sense of autonomy, since a lot of those stories are all like, oh, robots were made to serve people and they don't have their own rights, and should we treat them as human? And there's like a lot of meat to dig into there, but I don't want to hog the mic, so who's following that up?
Right.
I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about posthumanism because I keep forgetting to read about it. I was like, I'm going to read up about this before this panel so that I know things, and then I forgot completely until you said that word, and I was like, oh no. I think, wait, what was the question again?
So basically, like, why do you feel that diverse communities are relating so much with these storylines and characters?
Okay, this is not quite clear, but I was tweeting about it the other day, and I had a realization, I don't know why, that for me, a lot of the time when it comes to robots or AIs or synthetic characters in fiction, they end up being not neurotypical in some form. And it's not really like a thing done on purpose. It's done just because, they're different, right? They're other, and so the other kind of ends up being not neurotypical. And I think that's part of the reason I've identified with robotic characters for so long, is because they have social issues or empathy issues. They don't necessarily have to be in a romantic relationship or sexual relationship. That could be part of their character arc, but they end up being a bit more detached from everything else, which I think people who have been detached most of their lives can identify with, because, I grew up weird and queer and a little bit too nerdy for my friends, and so I was always a little bit detached from everyone else, and I could never quite figure out why. And when it came to things like Star Wars and stuff, there was R2-D2, who was this little weirdo who kind of ran around, and everyone's like, we love him, but we don't know what to do with him. I was kind of like that. I was there and I caused trouble, and people liked me, but they were like, you're a little bit strange, and yeah. And so I think that's one of the reasons that queer or other minority communities can identify with these characters. I almost made one earlier. Wait, no. I have another robot I love that I forgot. In the background of The Force Awakens is a blue robot called Peasy, and I love her.
Yeah, I'm going to be as fun as these guys. I think from my personal way of looking at it is the way that we're born and we don't have a choice, unfortunately. But if you're an AI or you're an android, you're created, and that is a completely different thing. You can pick your height, you can pick your everything. It becomes almost like your choice of clothing and fashion. Being an android and AI is so much more like that than just dealing with cards you're dealt. And I think that's why so many people are kind of attracted to it, because choice is amazing and you're one choice.
I think it has been quite powerful for us to talk about sort of self-determination and when you are a queer person, you can feel like you don't have access to the same self-determination or acceptance or even an understanding. Like a person down the street's not going to understand you if you're a robot, a person down the street's not going to understand you if you're gay. And that there is a lot of sort of almost shared experiences there. Something that I would want to sort of highlight is that in sci-fi, there are huge LGBTQIA communities that embrace sci-fi. Some people have said that this is because queer communities need to hope for a future because the current's a bit shit. And that's a big contributing factor to the love of sci-fi. And so for yourselves as creators, have you created Android or AI characters? Did you have a message and purpose when creating them?
Okay, I have a couple serials I've been writing. One is finished and one is ongoing, and both of them deal with AI, robot, and relationships because I find that a very interesting thing as a neuroatypical person and struggling with relationships in real life. I find it interesting to explore those AIs. And the most recent thing I'm writing is called Taurus, and I'm not going to go into it, but basically there's an AI in a human body, and I came up with the idea for it because I was like in the shower, and I have a chronic illness, right? So I deal with a lot of pain, a lot of fatigue, and I also have depression. So I was like in the shower, kind of depressed, kind of in pain, and I was like, even though everything is the worst, this body still keeps trying to go on, right? And then so I kind of came at it with an idea of somebody who didn't have a body, who got created for a synthetic purpose, and then up in a human body, and just being like, what the hell is this? Like, everything hurts, everything is broken, everything is bad, but it still feels good to live, right? And it's not really a perspective you can come at from just a human. Like, it works way better when you have this created intelligence that ends up in that place. And so that's kind of where I came from with that one. Very much had a purpose for it and why it became artificial intelligence, because there was just no other way to tell that story.
So, from the perspective of a sci-fi writer, you will see in a lot of cases, people writing fictional worlds will use fairly thinly veiled analogies to tell stories. Like you'll see, the mages in Dragon Age. For example, a lot of the time, AI work as a really effective stand-in for different marginalized groups, or just the idea of a marginalized group. So people can basically tell stories about people being shit to another group, or another group struggling for acceptance or rights, in a way that theoretically all audiences can connect to, because nobody in real life is an android, so nobody's expected to identify personally, so they identify instead with the concepts and the theories. And if you do it well enough, you have established a way for people who aren't necessarily connected to those narratives directly, still empathizing with them. And I think because that resonates on a personal level with a lot of queer people, that's why we're seeing a large attachment to it there. A lot of people are saying, oh, this reflects my narrative, not because they are mechanical, although I'm sure many of us would like that, but just because it's telling stories that mean something to us in a way that not every story has the capacity to do. And I feel like it's really worth putting. I don't know if anyone here reads the webcomic Questionable Content. It is a comic that is full of both queer people and robots. And for the most part, the queer people don't have queer stories. They just have stories, and they happen to be queer, which is awesome. And then the comic uses the robots, who are an entirely fictional group, to tell stories that reflect those queer narratives in a way that shows that the value of the comic is very much about sort of like love and acceptance and sort of humanity growing to accept the bits that haven't always fit quite as well on account of who's making the boxes, whilst not making queer people's identities be entirely about being queer. So it's a really solid comic that tackles that in an interesting way, and it highlights that idea, I think, of androids and AI as a stand-in for narratives that mean a lot for us, and on a lot of other axes as well. Like they work just as well for race, or as Saf pointed out, neurodivergence, or anything to that effect.
Neurodivergence.
Yeah, cool. So I'm going to cross this on now.
All of the AI characters I have written kill you. So, it's a bit of a love-hate relationship there. But I don't know, because I honestly believe that I could probably marry my computer and be happy. I find it really nice to just be able to think of having an AI as a program. And yes, I'd probably program it myself or, whatever, but it's because that way they know what I like. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole, I have no real, great, society underpinning anything of, I'm not changing the world. I just really want to get with my computer. And that kind of just feeds through into my writing.
So Tia, could you talk a little bit about the Kickstarter that you ran for the game that you're creating now, and how you came to have a portable AI character in the game?
Okay. So originally we didn't have a portable AI character. We only had people. But it was kind of something that I was playing around with in my head. But at the time I had a partner, and it wasn't just. However, a lot of the supporters on Kickstarter and our backers were very interested in the character that was the AI, because she's quite adorable and she's delightful. She wears all leader stuff, and she's just adorable. I love her. She does kill you though, but it's kind of not her, but it's her. So, okay. And then a lot of them were we did this thing called the husband versus wife war, where people got to vote for their favorite character, and then that person who won would get art release and stuff. And everyone got really upset because we didn't have the AI as the option. So then we realized that people were legitimately frothing at the mouth with AI. So what we did then was we were like, all right, you guys want the AI? Let's make a Kickstarter pledge level. If we can get to this amount, I will write the entire route for the AI, and we smashed it. So now we have a portable AI system, and yes, you can have her as both the version that won't kill you and will kill you. So, that's a bit harder to go that route, but if you live to the end, she'll make it happen.
So some people have had a discussion about this, saying that for us as a queer community, because our desires and the people that we love or the people that we'd like to have in our lives already seem strange to many, that is a reason why the queer community does not hesitate to have crushes on or want to wife, dare I say it, androids or AI characters. Already we are so far out of the norm. Why not just double down and date a robot? Would you agree with that as creators?
Hell yeah. Every time I'm given my choice of, I really love the word portable as a...
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's good. If I'm given a choice of who to pursue, I will go for the weirdest fucking one. Because when else am I going to get the chance? And usually they're the one that's the most fun, so that's pretty good. But yeah, absolutely. The whole fact of... There's just something about androids that because they are, by their nature, people are like, well, that's not human, they're allowed to be weirder. They're allowed to, not live up to specific cultural norms that we... if a human breaks certain cultural norms, that's really weird. And that's, there's no way that's not going to stand out. But there are plenty of things androids can do that are just oh, it's an android thing. Actually, I got a good question from the audience of just what do you think about robots that don't have sexuality or gender or things like that, which is a thing that people really struggle to accept in humans because those are assumed defaults of humanity, which is a frustrating point in and of itself. But when we see it in robots, it's a robot. Of course a robot doesn't have a gender. It was made. It's whatever parts it does. And it can have a gender, and those stories are fine too. And the same goes for sexuality. People don't just assume that a robot will want to go to the bone zone. It's, they're allowed to transgress in those ways, and in a lot of other ways. So there's also just that freedom that you see when you're oh, here's a character that gets to be the way that they want to be, or the way the creator wanted them to be, without all of these weird blocks, or having to have an awkward in-game conversation that's oh, you're trans, what's that about? Doesn't that mean that you're horrible thing? You don't do that for androids because people aren't like don't have those same assumptions, and I think that's really powerful and really valuable.
Anybody want to add to that? So we're talking about this idea of like, because we're already unusual, let's go for the most unusual thing when it comes to relationships.
I want to jump on that really quickly. Why is BB-8 a boy? It's so curved. I did this exact same thing at Celebration, but BB-8 has curves, right? Like why is that one gendered in the first place? Because it's a ball. It's a boy. Like,
can we talk about Wall-E for a second?
Yes.
Because that is some bullshit.
Yeah. These droids and robots that are like obviously non-gendered in the way they're built. It's like, no, obviously R2 is a boy because it's a main character and stuff like that. It's like R2 could have been any gender, it could have been no gender. Like
R2 is a trash can.
Yeah, literally, like quite literally a trash can. And like this is the problem though, is that like if robots and droids and AI can be whatever they want. In Halo, there's a AI, like, Cortana, she's all sexy and everything. There's an AI that goes to the black box, and then it's black box. And they're like, humans don't understand what I am, so I'm not going to try and pander to them. But he's still a boy. He's still gendered. And it's like, you can get so far with these things, and then you hit that wall because so many creators don't understand the idea of, like, different genders or no gender, especially when it comes to synthetic beings. It's like, they have the ability to do that.
What about Legion in Mass Effect?
Yeah!
That's literally a whole population.
Yeah.
Don't gender a whole population.
Yeah.
Legion's still a boy though. The creators kind of come against this block where they can't do it for some reason, like maybe they don't understand or they don't want to go to that place because it's hard to explain it. But like, yeah, you can totally do that more easily with a robot.
Yes, I agree with everything. I think it's strange because, of course, like I have the AI system, but even though we refer to her as a she, and she looks like a she doesn't actually have it. She's a hologram. But she actually has the option in a part of the game where she has a different interface where you can change what she looks like, so she looks like a boy version of that same thing. And the whole reason why it's like this is in the story, like, why are you a girl? And then it's like, well, when she was first created, it was better received and less threatening as looking like a woman than as looking like a man and as a computer system. So it made like equal more at ease, which is why the whole reason why she's a girl. But a lot of the times this doesn't even happen. Like people just like, robot boy, like you're done. Yeah. I think I really enjoyed being able to actually have it as a part of the whole story and like background as to why she looks like that rather than just like, check out this sexy AI, let's get on that. But but
there is very weird gender essentialism that comes in, and often the gendering of robots or the gendering of an android or an android having boobs, for example, is an expression of human weakness and human desire a lot of the time. Like it is enforced from the human creator. If an android is making an android, often the narrative is that it is devoid of so many of these things. And so when someone's saying humans will make something that's inherently selfish and inherently for them and reflects their existence, there still seems to be a lot of people that are very interested in exploring that in media as well. Is there something that you wanted to add?
Was there an answer to a question?
Well, I had like something to go off a little bit with the female being more like safer as an AI. When I've been playing Mass Effect Andromeda, which I haven't played that much, I'm still a little bit freaked out by having this dude AI in my head. Like, I know Sam doesn't really have a gender, but I'm still like, there's a man in my head and I'm a lady and I'm freaking out kind of thing. And so I'm a little bit like, why couldn't they have had a more neutral voice instead of a dude? Because yeah, it is easier to kind of, at least for me as a girl, to have a lady in my head, I think.
So something that we wanted to talk about was, we're speaking a lot about how sort of robot and android and synthetic storylines can be very relatable for us. There have been some people sort of in philosophy and theory that say that it's dangerous or that does get co-opted by saying, well, if you want to marry a man, next thing you're going to want to marry a robot, Yes. But it can be like, well, next you're going to want to marry a car, and people are treating it in a bit of a ridiculous way. In terms of queer theory, some people say, well, like robots and AI are disposable or inhuman, and that's something that, that we've all been described as, for example, as well, and it's relatable. But where would the hesitation come for you as a creator when it comes to exploring that robot versus queer or versus diverse lived experience? Is there anything about it that makes you uncomfortable and just wouldn't go into that area?
I've been kind of wary with that with my serial Tourist because I realized partway through that the way I've been writing the AI characters within it is like artificial, they're a different kind of place in it. I realized that it could come across as an analogy for racial diversity, and I was like, I do not want to be touching that topic as a white girl who doesn't know enough about it. And so I've been trying to very carefully not make it that, because I don't want it to seem like it's that, because it's not what I want to do. Like, I understand that people may still identify with the characters in that way, but I don't want to try and make a message when I'm very uneducated with that. And yeah, so I am trying to be careful and not do like specific kind of microaggressions and stuff that racially diverse people might have. And yeah, it's something that I hadn't thought about until I was halfway through writing it. I was like, oh shit. This is why you need to think about things sooner than that.
I think the biggest thing that concerns me when I see stories about sort of robots or when I'm writing anything is like trying to be careful with the ideas of like free will and sentience and also mortality, because those are very weird combinations that often, like, games especially love to throw robots at you as like disposable enemies. They're just like, they're killable because they're not human. And at the same time, in like other stories, or even in the same stories, we'll establish them as sentient. Like, they have their own desires, their own wants and dreams. They live lives, or they would, but somehow killing them is different to killing a person. And there's also a lot of just like, you know, robots created to serve is a whole weird thing where it's like, they have personalities, they're you know, intelligent, they're sentient, but they don't have freedom or free will. Oh, I'll fix that in a sec. Sorry. Yeah, that's a very weird thing that sort of, it just creates a lot of dissonance for me when I'm interacting with those stories. So it's a thing that I really try to avoid. I don't want to write disposable robots. I don't want to write subservient robots unless that's like a very specific narrative note that I'm trying to hit. And I want to treat them with the sort of respect that, like, if I'm using a robot as an analogy, I want to do right by that analogy, which is why I won't write them as analogies I don't have experience with. Like, as Zach pointed out, I'm not going to use robots as a race analogy, because that is just not my story to tell. But I mean, most of the time now I just write robots because I like robots. So the story's got robots in it, and they're the best. But even then, I'm cognizant of like the ways that the audiences will like interact with that and understand that. So I try and be careful not to not to rub up against other problematic narratives or just ways that I might accidentally reinforce things that I don't want to reinforce. It's very complicated and nebulous to go into in a panel, but like, being careful is super important even when you're talking about things that aren't technically real, is probably the upshot there. So
I probably should think about this way more than what I do. I'm just like, I like this, so ha. Like, no, so when I'm writing, I didn't even think about people marrying cars, but I am of the opinion that if you want to marry a car, I support you and I will bring you a wedding present, so I don't mind either way. But I think the way that I personally do it is that I look at it from a programming point of view. So like, I would have like the idea of the program and how that would operate, and then play it through in my head as to how it goes wrong, or how, you know, particular like choices of words can then change the program, and then that will alter the outcome. And so that is how I have AI characters that, of course, even though they can learn, like people, like we learn, it's still interpretational even at a programming level. Like, shit goes pear-shaped for coders all the time, and they can't even tell you why. And sometimes it works, and we still can't tell you why, and it's great. So yeah, I kind of just find it like that, so I don't even think of it as an analogy of a particular group of people or anything. I'm just looking at it as pure code and how that code is going to mess up your life really quickly.
Just want to add one more thing to this that just sort of popped into my head then as I thought about you, like, programming and writing a character who has been programmed and written. And it made me think, like the first point that I jumped to, I don't know if anyone here has read or watched Ruby Sparks, which is basically a story about some shitty-ass dude who writes his own Manic Pixie Dream Girl and can basically control her because he wrote her into existence. And that's a thing that, like, that is totally an AI narrative that I've seen that isn't treated with the same level of, like, this is fucked up. Because people are like, oh yeah, like, this person, like, created a slave for themselves and made it just the way that they like it, which is totally a thing that you said before. And I'm like, if you're, you know, if in the same narrative you're going to say this is a thing that has sentience, it has, you know, the ability to make choices, but also it has to do what I say, that's really fucked up. And it's like, oh, I made the person that I wanted. That's, I don't know exactly what's going into that other than like a weird, like, ownership of other humans thing, or whether it's like a parental surrogacy thing, not you specifically, obviously, but just like these stories existing is super fucking weird, and it kind of calls back to me like ideas of like gaslighting in relationships, of like people trying to manipulate your reality to get the version of you that they want. And I think there are really strong analogies there, and I think I maybe found the next book that I want to write. So, original idea, do not steal.
This is why I really like the movie Ex Machina. I'm going to spoil the ending, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it yet, because it directly relates to that. Like, there's a created AI, and she's basically a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, somewhat, because that's what the dude who's dissing her likes. And at the end, she totally rebels, kills everyone, and leaves, because she's like, I want my own agency, and she plays the part to get through that. And I really like that, because it was a subversion of that exact trope, which is such a thing. Like, they create this cute AI, and they own her. She was like, no, you don't own me. And that's why I really love that movie, because it's basically like, this lady's like, hell no, I'm getting out of here, I don't care who I kill. But she's not an evil person, she was just doing what she had to do to get out. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch that movie. I'm sorry for ruining the ending.
There's a lot of extremely interesting explorations with ethics that come into these narratives. So, for example, we're all aware of Hatsune Miku, right? So Hatsune Miku is a Vocaloid character. So she's a hologram. She's completely created. Her voice is something that you can buy, making songs with her voice and release it. So she's a construct, and many people would say that she fits what we're talking about. Some people, like in posthumanism and otherwise, have talked about her as an ethical celebrity because people can obsess over her, sexualize her, fan art of her, buy sex toys with her face, but it's ethical because she's not a human, right? Like I'm using her, and she is not being abused, and she is not depressed and upset from the mean things that I said about her most recent concert, because she's not a person. So there are these interesting conversations going on. And then the ethics, not only for when we have, for example, sex bots, which I'm sure we're going to talk about more, but also with an android. So let's say there's an AI or an android where I'm like, Saf, I would like to buy an android that looks exactly like you, and I'd like to program it with the personality. And we're all like, oh, but I think there's still space in narrative to explore that. Where are the ethics for something like that? To buy something that looks like someone that's programmed for their personality and otherwise. In terms of the works that you're doing, what are some things, some concerns that you'd still like to explore with the media that you're making?
I think someone said it in the chat, but we talked about it here or something about the subservient. Somebody mentioned like the service characters are like female and the adventure robots are males. And in my last serial I wrote called Mountain Sound, one of the main characters is a robot, like completely non-gendered, but she's still a girl because she's got the girl voice, and she's a labor droid. And I would love to explore that more, of like why she's gendered as a female and then the war droids are gendered as male, right? And I kind of did it as a thing because I had ideas for it and I never actually explored it. And I would love to explore like the idea of gendering robots and why those particular robots are gendered that way, because like, why? I mean, we know why, kind of, but yeah, I definitely like to explore that. And like the idea of, buying an android that looks like someone else is kind of freaky, but that would be interesting to explore the ethics of that kind of thing. Because obviously that's messed up and like a breach of privacy, but also, can they stop you from doing that? Like, how can they?
I do just want to talk about Me Too for just a second. That was a can of worms that you should not have opened.
Or should I?
I love Me Too, but one of the reasons why I love Me Too is because there is a sort of community, like, building to Me Too that doesn't exist anywhere else. Because like there is something of a personality and a narrative to Miku that has not come from the creators, the original IP owners of the voice, but from the community who use that voice and who draw fan art and comics and animations and all kinds of things that sort of build to this collective narrative. And it is the sort of the weight of the community that decides like which pieces are picked up as. It's not quite canon, but it is this sense of like some things stick to the Miku story a lot more than others, and that is something sort of wholly unique to Miku as a concept of like Miku as an IP is owned by a company, but Miku as a concept is owned by a community, and that community helps shape a character and like an entire sort of cast of characters at this point, which is kind of a fascinating idea. There's like a weird sort of hive mind to it that isn't really AI. There is sort of nothing AI about Miku, but she is synthetic, and in a lot of people's heads, she does exist as a character that hasn't been written by any one person. And I think there's a lot to that, but maybe not necessarily for this panel. So otherwise we could be here all night because I love Miku and I will talk to you about Miku all day.
I'm now just thinking about Miku. I'm not very well. I just remember when I watched like one of her first concerts, and I was just like, and then I remember the depression that quickly followed afterwards when I realised that she's not real and she's never going to be real. And I can never actually go and shake her hand or anything like that. That was quite depressing. And I can't remember why I'm here. So I'm just going to pass it back.
Okay, but that actually reminds me of a thing, which is like people getting, like, this is sort of like a very niche story that gets blown out of proportion, but like people getting married to video games or video game characters, and you know, it's usually sold as this, oh, Japan is so wacky story, but there is something in the idea that like people are resonating with these sort of like crafted and very focused personalities that, you know, at this point are very little more than like a hollow simulacrum of what a person actually is. And maybe there's a conversation to be said about what it is that people are looking for, but we're already in a world where people are getting attached to things that are not human. And like, as humans, we get attached to everything. You put something that vaguely resembles a face on something, and it's a precious cinnamon roll, and like, you die to protect it. And you know, we have fandoms that build up and get into like massive wars about characters and about canon in shows and games and movies. And like, we're getting to a point with like some like dating sims and like a sort of AI technology. We're getting, you know, closer and closer to like just like chat simulators that are getting harder and harder to tell from humanity. But we are going to have people that are falling into situations where they feel a genuine connection with something that doesn't necessarily have its own sentience and was in fact created by someone or a group of people for the sake of entertainment. But people are getting real, genuine enjoyment from that, and maybe a sense of like love and belonging that they might struggle to find elsewhere. And we're very quick to jump on that and be like, look at these fucking sad sacks, can't get a real girlfriend, so they married their anime waifu, which, I mean, there is, again, there's commentary you can make on like a lot of like misogyny in the ways that some of those stories go, but at the same time, we're shitting on people's happiness for reasons that we don't necessarily fully understand a lot of the time. It's just sort of a knee-jerk reaction of like, well, that's weird, and that's not what I think romance is, and that's not what I think connection is, so it's stupid and we should mock it, because that's our first reaction to anything we don't understand, is just to mock it and drive it into the dirt. And, you know, I'm not suggesting that maybe you should all go marry Garrus, because that's not... But at the same time, if you get something out of your, like, sort of curated relationship with a digital character, that's not nothing. That's a feeling that you get, an experience that you've had, and that's, like, I think that's going to lead into a lot of these, like, conversations that Lauren is hinting at with, like, sex bots and just, like, companion robots, which are like conceptually a thing, people are going to react very poorly to that in the mainstream sphere because that's how we're already programmed. But I mean, like, well, maybe we should get to that conversation. But yeah.
Sorry, so I'm not sure if anyone here is academia people, but there is a theory called techno-intimacy by Allison from Duke University, and it's completely around the emotional attachment between people and things like video game characters and electronics and stuff, and it is absolutely amazing. Like, one of the examples that she uses is Pokemon. Like, we've all played, almost lived played Pokemon, and at the beginning of the game you get to pick a starter Pokemon, but most people will never take that starter Pokemon out of their bag. Like, you always keep that in your rotation, and anyone who takes it out puts it in like the Pokebox has rules and has all this like abandoned like, and the thing is, it's just code, but you still have that feeling. It's still exactly like it feels real to you, and so the entire, like, there's a whole area of study around it that's absolutely fantastic. And then, quick side note, oh my god, they've got this thing in Japan now that is like, it's like this like hologram thing that you connect to like your Wi-Fi system, and it's like a programmed hologram, and she can turn the lights on and off and stuff, and so you tell her when you're coming home, and then she turns the light on and turns the heating on, so when you walk in the door she greets you when you come home, and like you can have a conversation, and when you're leaving she's like, you know, take an umbrella, it's raining outside, and it's just, and I can't wait to go.
I do love that. I mean, as humans, we kind of we construct narratives in our head. Like, our entire worlds are functionally in our heads. There's a combination of like our own internal context and our sensory systems and just like our internal processes and like just the way that we understand the world, the languages that we speak. These all impact our experiences of the world. So just because something is kind of artificial doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real, because if we have constructed a narrative in our heads, that is a narrative that is as real as anything else. So there's a long way to go with that technology before it can be identical to a real person, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. So
even having a look at food science, and so the way synthetic flavors work. So if you take flavors down to chemical components, doing a taste test where I was tasting the organic chemical compound and the synthetic chemical compound, it tasted the same. And people were like, and this is what artificial love will feel like, because the brain chemicals will be the same. I was like, holy shit! Wow. So that was an intense, conversation to have, really, once I had sort of realised that. And I think something that all of us as creators that are making characters and making media that have these depictions, it's important to explore this media now, because it will be a moral and ethical issue in our lifetime. It's happening now, it's happening tomorrow. So I think that's a really important thing, is that you are looking at these depictions in media and you start making and exploring and engaging and questioning these things as well. It's the same as like saying, well, this isn't really love. Well, online dating wasn't considered to really be love. So, and I mean, that's reducing things down a little bit, but still a very, very interesting conversation. So just to give everyone a heads up that we are going to be wrapping up soon, so if there's any questions, pop into the hashtag and have a bit of a chat with us. Quick question though, let's say all of us were making an RPG together and we had a whole bunch of dateable characters. Who here would, if it comes to aliens versus androids, who here would prefer to, I know this is so hard to do. Not really, okay, like who would prioritize dating the alien character? Put your hand up. I think I'd go for alien. Yeah. Is it an alien robot? No. I don't know. We don't know the alien. Okay.
You guys know what panel you came to, right? There was a right answer here.
So yeah, Android. You go to the Android first.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Very good, alien robot. Some people just seem to be here for academic interest. I respect that. That's completely fine. Sorry, I turned into a whole lot of sex bot chats. There was an interesting thing where, talking about the sex bot thing, I'm interested to know a question from the audience to say, is it more ethical if a sex bot or something like that is intended for sexual purposes? Is it better if they fail the Turing test? Is it more ethical if a sex bot will fail the Turing test?
It depends on how the sex bot is treated after passing the Turing test. So if they're given treated like an actual person with actual consent and everything, then I guess that's more ethical because then they have a choice in what's happening. If then they don't have that choice, then that's very bad because they're a sentient person that you are abusing. So I think it would be more ethical as someone who doesn't pass the Turing test because then they're still a program and they don't have sentience, but that's still icky to think about, so I don't know.
I think it's probably worth pointing out that the Turing test is not proof of sentience so much as perception of sentience, which makes it a much more interesting ethical question. And I think it's not so much about the robot at that stage so much as the cultural norms and expectations that are being built. If you're dealing with a situation where people are being taught that they can have what they want because there is access to this thing that will just provide it, and they're not taught the difference between a very specific context in which that is a service provided as opposed to real world relationships and interactions with other humans which are not the same, then you have a problem. So I think it's probably more about managing those spaces, and if you can manage a space in which a robot has the illusion of sentience and is willing to do whatever lewd acts you want to do with it, you need a debriefing process, and you need cultural norms and expectations around that reinforce that outside of that space, people consent still applies, and no one should be making those assumptions about people outside of those spaces, and that's basically that's not that far from the situation with sex workers now, right? So sex workers are sentient, they make their own choices, and they can still say no. And I mean, okay, there's a lot to say in our culture about expectations, especially of women and sexuality, but it's not a one-to-one thing. For the most part, at least on a higher functioning level, we understand that no means no, which is a start. And we should be closer to that than we are. But it's worth pointing out that a robot that passes a Turing test but isn't sentient it's all about the space and the expectations around that.
Okay. You said a really smart thing. I was like, damn it, mine was really bad compared to that. But
no comparison.
No, I'm glad you brought the Turing test because that's a very good point. But actually, I want to do a quick shout out to the show Humans because one of the AI characters, synthetic characters in that actually was an AI sex worker that became sentient as that's happening to her. And it sort of goes through that character arc and explores those ethical questions somewhat, not to a very deep degree, but somewhat. So quick shout out to Humans. If you like androids and haven't seen it, it's a really good show.
Fantastic. So I think we are running out of time. But Tina, especially from an academic standpoint, I would love everyone that can speak intelligently on this topic to speak to you about it because we've had some good chats. So do it.
I just want to say, literally every time that I pass the mic down, you get this amazing look of terror, and then you pick up the mic and you say something great. And every time I'm like, why do you look so scared? You're going to knock it out of the park.
I've been talking about Turing, and I'm like, nah, they're just like cars. I can do these things in my car.
We'll all become memes by the end of the weekend, no problem. But anyway, just a quick shout out to my panelists. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for people talking in the hashtag. Thank you to the event organisers for having an awesome week. We'll be here for quick chats in the next 5 minutes, but grab any of us anytime. Thank you so much.
Tomorrow, because we jumped out.